Handbook.
Members of the administration.
Matt Correnti, Director of Finance and Operations.
Bruce McIntyre, Director of Facilities.
Courtney Cron, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Emily Blestein, Director of Communications and Engagement.
Okay. Motion to adopt the agenda be entertained now.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the agenda.
I'll
Is there-
second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion is adopted. First public comment period. So the board has public comment guidelines. Public is encouraged to comment and welcome at each regular board meeting during the period designed for public comment. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Citizens will be called to make their statements by the board. As a reminder, the public comment period is not designed to be a discussion, but rather an opportunity for board members to listen to constituents. Public comments regarding personnel, students, or legal matters will not be heard by the board. Is there anyone in the room wishing to make a public comment? Is there anyone online wishing to make a public comment? You see, Jason?
No one has raised their Zoom hand.
Okay. Seeing no public comment, we'll move along to my last action in this administrative process. As this is your reorganization meeting, it is customary, for someone other than a board member to go ahead and run the meeting until you have a chair. So at this time, I would take nominations for chair. Jason,
I'd like to nominate Suzanne Buck for board chair.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Can I see who seconded? I'm taking notes.
Steve?
Yeah, I know
Steve?
somebody else.
I heard Steve.
said down
Go
there.
Steve.
Okay.
Yep, I heard Steve.
Okay.
Any other nominations?
I'll nominate Barb.
Okay, Barb Wilson, is there a second?
Second.
Any other nominations? Motion for nominations to close.
So moved.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of nominations ending?
Aye.
Okay. We have Suzanne Buck and Barb Wilson. Both of you are willing to serve in the position if you're elected. Your vote will start, I think, by just a voice vote. And we'll see if that's a discernible difference. If not, then we'll just go by roll call. Does that sound fair?
I was gonna say, I think we have to recall.
I think, yeah.
I think it has to be roll call.
I think it has to be, well, it could be roll call, or also we do have our district clerk here who has been advised that if any of the elections are contested, it needs to be balloted. And that's why she's here. From what I've been told, and that's the way we did it 3 years ago in Ripton.
So my understanding is that.
Has that changed?
Yeah, my understanding is you can't do ballots for election officials. You have to do a roll call vote if needed. Sometimes it isn't needed if it's voice vote, but let's do a roll call vote.
Do you mind if I just
Yep.
write everybody's name?
Yep. First. So you would be voting either for Suzanne or for Barb as chair. And as soon as Mary Heather puts everybody's name down, then we'll start at the end with Jason. Is that all right?
No problem.
We'll just kind of come up through.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. Jason,
Suzanne.
Trish,
Suzanne.
Suzanne.
Barb.
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 Mary Heather,
Um. Barb.
Steve,
Suzanne.
Ron,
Barb.
Barb,
Barb.
Jess,
Barb.
Jamie.
Myself.
Okay.
I have 8 for Barb. And 5 for Suzanne.
Okay. I'm just going to pass this entire thing over to Barb. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you all for being here tonight and allowing me to serve as chair for another year. What I'd like to do now is to finish out the slate of officers, and then we'll move on with the agenda. First up, and again, each one of these will do the roll call vote. Vice chair, do I have nominations? Jason,
I'd like to nominate Suzanne Buck for vice chair.
do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Who's that?
Laura.
Thank you.
Laura, sorry. Any other nominations for vice chair? Ellen,
I nominate Mary Heather Noble.
okay, a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any other nominations for vice chair? Should we close nominations?
Seconded.
Okay, all those in favor of closing nominations?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so now we'll do the same routine.
Sorry, can I
actually-
just
Yeah.
get
You have to ask if
the
they want.
folks who motion
Trish
for
moved.
closing?
I move to close.
I seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And do both of the,
Yeah, do both folks want the nomination and are willing to serve as vice chair?
No.
Okay. So we have Suzanne then?
Yes.
And in this particular case, I do think we can just do a voice vote. All those in favor of Suzanne being vice chair, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And Suzanne, congratulations.
It's my last year on the board. I will not be returning.
So,
we appreciate your service, Suzanne.
yes,
I ran for 3 years in Bridgeport, and I told them when I ran. I would not be continuing.
okay. Next, let's have nominations for clerk.
I nominate Mary Heather Noble.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Gosh, I hope so.
So both Jamie and Suzanne, so you can select
Simultaneously,
one. They
you can
were
pick one.
almost exactly at the same time. Any other nominations for clerk? Can I have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
Second.
Second? All those in favor of closing nominations?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then we'll do a voice vote for this as well. All those in favor?
Mary Heather.
Yes, I'm willing.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank God. All those in favor of Mary Heather being our clerk again, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. Congratulations, Mary Heather, and as I said, thank goodness.
Thank you very much, Mary Heather.
Okay, next, we need to appoint a truancy officer. And typically, after talking to Dr. Baker, this is, in the past, we didn't do this. We actually used the resource officer, I think, but it really should be someone from the county, typically from the sheriff's department. And so, because it represents all schools, right? And so, Matt, I believe, reached out to the sheriff.
Michael Elmore.
Michael
I move to nominate Michael Elmore as the truancy officer for the ACSD district for the 2025-26 year.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, so are we ready to close the nominations? Okay, Jason?
What is the role of the truancy officer?
That's a good question.
If there were truancy follow-up that would need to be done with the family or any kind of paper served, in that process, then the truancy officer would do that. When it's been the SRO officer before, they're typically from obviously the Middlebury Police Department, and they don't have jurisdiction outside of Middlebury. So in that way, it would be very infrequent that that this wonderful, willing participant would be called into service, but we're grateful to have the
Okay.
support.
This is an unpaid position, I assume.
Correct. Yes.
Which is probably why you want somebody from the county as opposed to,
Yeah.
just Middlebury. Okay, any other questions? Okay, shall we close the nominations? Can I have a motion?
Move to close the nomination.
Second.
Okay, Laura and Jamie. All those in favor of closing nominations, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nominations are closed. All those in favor of appointing Michael Elmore as our truancy officer, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we have appointment of representatives for our Hannaford, 2 school board members represent and sit on the board for the Hannaford Career Center. And so we have 2 of those. So let's do one at a time. So can I have nominations for our first representative to represent the board for Hannaford Career Center?
I nominate Steve Orzek.
Second.
Okay. And any, well, this is kind of, should we just do both?
Do both at the same time.
Yeah, let's do both at the same time. So, because I was like, this is awkward. Who should we, who can we nominate now? Who would,
I would like to nominate Tricia Allen to serve on the PAAC.
Second.
okay.
Third.
Any other nominations?
Can I say something? I am
Yes.
happy to remain as a representative and serve again. However, I would also be very happy if anyone else wanted to step up. I think it's been a great learning experience to have a much deeper understanding of what's going on at the Career Center and how it interacts with our board. So again, I am happy to serve again, but if anyone has an interest, don't feel like you're stepping on my toes. I'm happy to spread the wealth.
Right. And it's okay to nominate yourself. Anyone else interested?
Would any of our new board members like to learn more about the Career Center? It's truly a great experience to sit on that board and to learn about the programs and how they budget and all the different pieces that go into the Career Center. So that's why I'm just.
Laura?
Can we get an idea of the time commitment associated with this position?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve and Tricia.
It's 2 meetings a month, 1 full board meeting, which is generally 2 hours or less, and 1 committee meeting, which is generally an hour on the dot.
Usually after work hours, Tricia?
Yep. I mean, as this board goes, whoever's on the committee makes a decision about when it's going to meet. Currently, the Career Center full board meetings are on Thursdays in the evening, and committees decide amongst themselves.
And just like this board, there are standing committees, like budget and policy, communication, so, and it's a fairly sizable board, so there is it's not like you have to be on 5 different committees.
Right.
It's a size similar to this board, so that wealth is shared. I would offer the same thing as Tricia, except I'm the vice chair.
Yeah.
So I don't, and they had trouble filling that position, so I'd be happy.
A promise.
Okay, go ahead,
I'll
Mary Heather.
nominate Laura Harthen.
And I'll second it.
Okay. And so,
Well,
Tricia, do you want to then?
So yes, why don't we strike my name?
Okay. And you're good with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay, cool.
It's been a pleasure, really.
Yeah.
She recruited for it.
In the meeting.
Yeah, I think you'll really enjoy the experience. Yeah.
Great, awesome. So, okay. Next, all those in favor of nominating or appointing Steve and Laura to the Hannaford Career Center as our representatives for the upcoming school year, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. The next thing I would like to do is appoint 2 representatives to our CPAC committee, the Addison Central Special Education Parent Advisory Council. This board has 2 reps that sit on their board, and so I would like to open up nominations for the 2 reps to serve for that. Mary Heather?
I'll nominate Suzanne.
Okay. Suzanne,
No,
a second?
Second.
Another?
I'd like to nominate Mary Heather.
That's nice.
Well, she and I started on CPAC a year when it first started going, and then she.
Okay.
Okay. Any other nominations? Jason?
Did somebody second Mary Heather?
No, you're
I'll
good.
second.
Okay, awesome. Should we close nominations?
Move to close nominations.
Yep, okay. You first and second? All those in favor of
Wait, who
closing?
was first and second? I'm
Suzanne
sorry.
was first.
Suzanne
And Laura.
Thank you.
and Laura? And all those in favor of closing nominations, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. So, now we can vote. All those in favor of appointing Suzanne and Mary Heather as our representatives to the Addison Central Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or CPAC, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Next, we have another appointment. We also have 1 representative that sits on the MCTV board. And basically, they have meetings once a month. And for the meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. It's typically at 8 a.m. It's Zooming. So can I have nominations for that? I have been serving for the last 2-3 years, mainly because, no one has really stepped up to it, so I've done it. And I mean, I will do it again if no one else does. It's important, I think, for us to have representation on the MCTV. And as you can see, they're here recording this evening and do a lot with with Addison Central. But please, I don't have to do it. So is there any nominations?
I was going to nominate Trish.
Okay.
I don't know if it's conflict of interest though,
Yeah.
because you work in the library.
I am technically co-workers with Kurt, so I
Okay,
don't
so
know
then
that
never
it's-
mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other nominations?
Well, I think Barb, you actually have to be nominated.
I do. Go ahead, Laura.
I'd like to nominate Barb.
Yeah, Barb!
Well, at least I'm being nominated this time before I just assumed the role. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any other nominations? Shall we close nominations? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, and a second, Tricia, thank you. So nominations are closed, so all those in favor of appointing Barbara
First, we have to
Wilson.
vote.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's so many
Just-
steps.
I know.
I'm just trying to hurry us.
It's like computer coding. You
Shall
gotta
we,
close all those.
for all those in favor of closing nominations,
Aye.
any opposed? Okay, so I will do it again. Thank you. And Parks and Recreation, we need an appointment for that as well. And Mary Heather, maybe you could describe a little bit about what this is as well.
Sure. To be honest with you, in this last year, I've only attended one meeting.
Yeah, so it's an easy appointment.
And part of it is just because there's been quite a reorganization of how the Parks and Rec Board works and who they, just their authority and everything.
Right.
So it's more, it's not really it's more,
In Middlebury Department, use ACSD land and property. And we do have a lease agreement with them, that kind of thing, which is why it's really important, you know, to have representation on their board as well.
Well,
Go ahead.
I serve on the board for the library, and it doesn't, well, no, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
aside from that.
Okay.
Are we mandated to have this representation? Because I don't think being part of the board is actually going to get what you want
Right.
to get out of it.
agreed.
Right.
And so, at this point, Parks and Rec is nestled under Public Works, and so, as far as I know, Public Works doesn't have a committee. So it would be taking things up with the select board directly.
Exactly.
I don't think there's a mandate, right? And so I think we as a body can decide to or not to have representation. So I would entertain a motion either way, and then we can decide it that way.
So, can I move that we strike the appointment for Middlebury Parks and Recreation
Thank you.
representation.
Yes.
Whew.
Can I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, you may.
So, before we decide one
Yep.
way or another, and it does sound like in the last few years it's been sort of ceremonial more than
Yes.
real. Are we losing anything? I mean, so understanding that there's a lot of lease agreements, but I think a lot of that probably goes through our facilities
Yep.
staff and administration anyway. It's truly just ostensibly to be coordinated, but actually the coordination's probably happening in other ways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the times in the last few years they've come to us, they've come really to the board as a whole, for the skate park, you know, those kinds of things to get
A bigger project.
input and approval for. Any other questions? Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of striking the appointment to the Middlebury Parks and Rec, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, one less, that's okay. Moving on, it's now time to recommend, I need a motion to approve the minutes of February 24th, 2025. Can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes of February 24th, 25.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
Actually,
Okay, Steve?
on a couple of motions, we were not unanimous, and I'm trying to find the one where it said the motion passed with 1 nay and 1 abstention. I'm pretty sure that it has to be recorded who those people are. When it's not a unanimous decision, it has to be recorded that this person voted against it and this person abstained.
Which motion was that?
Well, there were two. The executive committee to convert board comments to the education transformation proposal, written testimony, that one, and then the personnel appointments. I do believe it says there's 1 abstention, and I looked, and I
Usually it's
Yeah,
Laura and I
it's
indicate
Laura,
that.
yeah.
Right.
I don't know if
And
I
I
did this
believe for the
time.
first one that you mentioned, it was Brian.
Brian was the no, and
And
I
you were
was
the
the
abstention.
abstention. So.
Yes,
So, meeting law says that if you have to record the individual votes, if it's a roll call vote. So
Right.
if you do a voice vote and then the voice vote is accepted, you don't have to record the individual votes.
right.
Okay.
So
Thanks for the clarification,
thank you,
Jason.
thank you, Jason. Okay, any other comments?
I'll just say that to the new folks, it's customary to abstain from voting if you have not been at the meeting where the minutes were.
Thank you, thank you. Okay. right, I call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes for our February 24th meeting, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have 3. Okay, let her get that down.
Okay.
And next topic is report of student representatives, but I see that we do not have our student representatives here, so that there's a seat here. So we'll move forward. Approval of ACSD bills, and in this case, even though we have not reorged yet, because Jason and Ellie were on the finance committee before, they agreed to do the bill review for us. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jason and Ellie.
On March 3rd, Ellie and I reviewed 4 payables warrants, 2 payroll warrants, one for February 7th, one for February 21st, each $1.3 million. Heather, I will email you a summary with the exact dollar amounts.
Sounds
in
great.
minutes. One McGilton Fund warrant for $815 and one general fund warrant dated February 28th for $865,156.81. We had a few questions. All the questions were answered directly, mostly from Melissa, and there were no concerns. So I'd like to move that we approve the bills read on March 3rd.
Second.
Okay, and Suzanne seconded it. Any discussion, questions? Okay, ready to move the question. All those in favor of approving the ACSD bills as reported by Jason, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the bills have been approved. Dr. Baker, I'm going to turn it over to you now for a report of the superintendent.
Okay, as is customary, first on the report of the superintendent, we have personnel appointments and resignations. Most of what you see there are related to spring sports. We're headed into coaching for spring sports. The one I want to call your attention to is an appointment of Myron Selleck as a driver. This is a new role, particularly with students who are on IEPs that need to go from one school to another or whatnot during the day at a more reasonable cost. You know, right now it costs about $60,000 to transport a student on a daily basis. And we are working hard to develop a different model that is more effective and efficient. And so Myron has agreed to come on as a driver in this pilot project, and he's able to start on April 7th. And this is something that, again, it's a new position. He's being paid and will be a member of the support staff contract. As a para-educator with driving responsibilities. That's how the position is structured. But it is a different position, and I just want to make that clear to you and ensure that we have your support to do that. So
Currently structured non-union.
Currently structured non-union. Mm-hmm. So if that stands, then that's okay. We'll have to make sure that will stand. That pay rate, however, is consistent with a para-educator pay rate. That is in our collective bargaining unit. So, yeah, our collective bargaining unit doesn't say driver. So the question is, can that kind of work together? To make sure that it's covered in that way. Yeah.
I'm sure that Matt has looked at this. Does this in any way violate the STA budget contract? Because they're pretty exclusive about that.
It's not we don't use them for this kind of transportation. Okay. Yeah, so we try, is it Tri-Valley, Matt, that we normally use? Who is it that often does a lot of the transportation that we would be doing in a different way?
It's, Tri-Valley does some of it, and then the other company is, student transportation. No, that's
I'm feeling better, so. Yep, Yeah, so it's not meant to
Okay.
change anything about that
Vermont Ride.
contract. Vermont Ride, yes,
Okay.
so, yep, good question. Other questions? Okay, so, usually you do a motion.
Do that for us.
I move to appoint Dwight Reisman as varsity girls ultimate frisbee coach, appoint Anne Murray as varsity girls ultimate frisbee coach, appoint Jamie Northrup as JV boys lacrosse coach. We've got a gem there, and appoint Myron Selleck as driver, effective a variety of times, but most of them start 3/10/25.
Okay, can I have a second? Mary Heather? Any questions, discussion? Okay, so, ready for the question. All those in favor of straight. And so as not to give any conflict of interest, appearances, right? She abstains when we're voting on positions. Thank you, Laura. Okay.
So the only other item I have for you tonight is just an update on the K-1 classroom in Ripton. When we last met, it was prior to the March 3rd deadline for inquiries that stemmed from the invitation we extended to all ACSD rising kindergartners and first graders to consider joining the Ripton K-1 classroom, which had 3 students at the time. And so they, in our hopes to get them to 10 students. We had 5 inquiries. Of those 5, 3 of them were either ineligible, such as someone inquiring who had not yet moved into the state, may or may not be able to do that kind of thing. And then there were 2 people who were interested in potentially continuing to pursue the opportunity. That did not bring us to a point where the educational programming could be delivered with integrity. And so we have advised the Ripton parent community, including the parents of those students who would have otherwise been in kindergarten and first grade, that the kindergartners and first graders will have spaces at Salisbury Community School. And Bjarki is available to talk with them about transitions and things of that nature. The Salisbury kindergarten class is currently approximately the same number. So we had a parent meeting where we discussed some of those things, as well as many other, things related to possible scenarios and statewide conversations and so on and so forth. We also went over some staffing changes that happen with slight reductions because we're going from a 3-classroom school to a 2-classroom school. And it's a very good meeting. I've been in touch with all of those parents. The question that I need some help on from Ripton, given its loss of that classroom and that it's small. It's small. So best case scenario, there'll be 22 students in the Ripton Elementary School in 2 classrooms, a 2-3 of 11 and a 4-5 of 11. C30. And in that policy, it provides for opportunities for parents to be able to be granted attendance in a school that's different from their town, which is currently where our attendance zones are. And those typically relate to a significant family or educational circumstance. Those are the most relevant to this situation that might occur. And I need some guidance from you as to whether we are considering that in this scenario, or whether or not you are of the mind to make a different type of an exception that allows parents to attend a different school if they would like to. It is not guaranteed that even if you don't take action to officially support a move, that the parents who are requesting or indicating that they would like their child to attend a different school, will otherwise do that of their own accord. For example, a parent may choose to homeschool their child, or they may choose to private pay somewhere else if they feel strongly about that circumstance. So I'm careful in my report to ensure to give you information that stays at a frustrating level of detail, because it's important that students are not identified in this process, and because we're talking about 4 grades and 22 students, I just want to be sure to err on that side of caution, and I appreciate your support in doing that. So it would help me. I don't feel that by policy I have clear guidance as to whether or not how I should be responding to these requests, and it would help me to understand more about where you are. I don't need you to make a decision about that tonight. I've asked parents to make sure that if there are any family circumstances that relate to projected enrollments, that they let me know of them prior to March 24th. So I'm very happy putting this back on the agenda for March 24th, and would hope that a decision at that time would be possible, and I would be coming back to you with more information about any other circumstances that have come up, if any, by that time. But I just need your assistance in thinking about this.
Question, Helen?
Obviously, without betraying any confidences or giving exact examples, Wendy, this policy and this provision in C30 has always been a little shrouded in mystery, at least for me, in knowing kind of what my understanding is, that when these requests come in, they policy to relocate their child from one school to another because they felt that the school that their child was now in town of attending was inferior to the other school. And we, that very quickly got sort of taken care of administratively. I still don't know what the outcome of that was. Because without getting into the specifics of the conversations you're having with families in Ripton, it seems like the concern is that the school is becoming so small that maybe that is feeling like not the environment that some parents might want their kids to attend. But I have no sense of what, this is very vague language in the policy, and it seems intentionally so that it could be interpreted by administrative decision-making. So I'm trying to understand how the situation we're in now is different from prior situations where that all happened at a different level.
Yep. So my understanding of the practice up to now is that it really has not been a school choice provision. It has not been this school would be a better environment. They have a robotics club, or my child really likes that, or they have the Iron Chef competition that they do, and I have a child that's really interested in that. It hasn't really been applied in that kind of a way. I don't know of an instance where it's been thought of as this particular school would be a better setting than my school. The instances that I'm more familiar with are instances that are, for example, if a family is in the process of separating, that would be an example of a personal circumstance, which might mean that a child is better served in a different situation than they're in right now, and perhaps neither of the parents are a resident, of that particular town, but it would be in the best interest of the child to attend a school that's inside the district but not in their particular town of attendance. An educational situation might be the teacher is my aunt and the child's aunt, and maybe that's not the best, circumstance for that child. And so moving to a school where, I've clearly made all of this up, right? We're moving to a school where they have a more objective, teaching circumstance is something that would be important. I think, there might be times when there is somebody located in a certain school that has a certain skill set that might be important relative to needs of a child. Oftentimes those are handled through IEP team decisions, but it could be that there's a student that, has a disability but is on a 504, and for some reason, there is another circumstance that might work. Personally, it could be that, a family, really, for financial reasons, has to miss a lot of work if the child stays in the town where they are, because where they have to work is very different, and so they ask for, a school that helps them to be able to stay employed in a way that's meaningful. Those are some examples. So to my knowledge, and as it was described to me as I was transitioning at this time last year into the role and sort of watching these come along, it's really in the past meant to be an exception, as opposed to something that is has more of a school choice feel to it. I will say that there are a number of people in the district, I think, who sometimes will choose to homeschool a child and during a part of 1 year. So if a year isn't going as they might like, they will homeschool a child for the duration of that year and then ask for another school the following year. My understanding is that those are typically not granted in that way, unless there are, again, very special circumstances that come along. So
Transfers shall be evaluated based upon documented circumstances which may include the following, and they list 4 situations. And so this is clearly a situation that's different than the 4 that are listed there in our policy today.
I think that we need to keep our eye on how this is evolving. I don't want to be back at this point and, oh, surprise, we have another class that's down below.
So just to be clear, next year I'm saying that in 25-26, we are scheduled to have 2 classrooms at 11. Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah, but the year after that.
Yep.
So.
So, what I can say is that your policy already is clear that families have the opportunity to stay together, and so those 30 exception in this circumstance.
Laura?
Can we get an idea of the numbers?
No,
Okay.
except that it's not. I don't think I have a way to do that exactly, except to say that it does.
Waiver, but there's nothing in the policy that allows for even the board to grant a waiver to the C30 policy, right? It says all decisions are made by the superintendent and they are final and not subject to appeal. So we would actually have to modify C30, right, to
Or to deter, you could do that. You could say we are going to make a motion to just simply allow. You don't even have to mention C30. Just simply grant these requests. Allow the superintendent to grant these requests. If you wish to do so. It could be that legal advice would have you do that in a specific way in a specific circumstance. But as a board, you have broad discretion to take any action that you feel is in the best interest of the district.
Jamie?
I'm wondering if in the next 2 weeks we can make a policy committee and have them have a meeting to look at this. The policy committee spent a long time talking about C30. I know a lot of us have thoughts on it, but this is different in a lot of ways, and it feels like we would either need some sort of amendment that would be either temporary or permanent, and then we would need to think of a variety of contingencies to deal with the effects of that decision, whatever they are, and that to me seems like a longer discussion that we're going to have right now, and I'm wondering if you think timeline-wise, what's the 24th again?
That's our next board meeting.
That's the next board meeting.
Yeah.
Do we have to know by that board meeting?
I think we need to be prepared to take action,
Yeah.
I mean, no,
It's
you
the
don't
next board
have to, but I think the sooner you bring clarity to folks, I think the more appreciative they will be.
Yeah.
Suzanne?
So what about if we brought this to the lawyers and said, what would
Right.
your suggestion be, knowing that there is so much going on in Montpelier that, you know, we could keep rewriting policy and trying to stay ahead of Montpelier, but by the end of this session, we should have some ideas where they're going, and then be able to try to control our own destiny, but based on what's coming out of Montpelier. But I would suggest that we start with just saying to the lawyers, this is the policy we have. What are your thoughts? What would be a motion that could allow this or not allow this? And what legal grounds would we have to stand on based on previous case law?
Yep. And definitely that's something we can do. I think Mary Heather, you're next, and then Ellen.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna suggest the same thing.
Yeah.
Just legal review, because, you know, there have been other cases in Vermont that, where this exact issue has come up, and there is some, you know, legal decision, that has been made, so it seems prudent that board members would need to look into those. I'm thinking specifically of, what was it, Wyndham, I think, and Roxbury. So it seems relevant for us to look into those cases as individual board members and also consult our attorney, just to see what, you know, what are the possibilities. I'm not sure that it's realistic for us to quickly create a policy committee and have a policy committee meeting and come up with written language and have that properly vetted in the time that we're talking about. I think, particularly since we've been saying, oh, we'll address C30, you know, later with care, I think we still want to hold on to that game plan of addressing C30 as a policy with care, recognizing that there are pressures at the state level and that as a district we do want to try to do our best to sort of forge the path that we think is best for our students. But in this particular circumstance, you know, this is a kind of another urgent matter that I think we have to rise to the occasion, and have some background knowledge and have some legal advice, and then make a clear-headed decision. So, and I guess, you know, the other thing that I think we have to keep in mind is that the longer we take, the more challenging it is for admin to, you know, get personnel lined up, staffing lined up. It's more challenging for families to make their decisions and plans, transportation. I mean, there's a whole sort of domino effect with us dragging our feet on this. So I think we just need to do our homework and our due diligence and make the best decision we can.
One of the other points that is happening now are other C30 requests. So, you know, usually as we're beginning to process some of those things, we are looking at are there openings? You know, how big are classes? You know, in the grades. You know, where we're making discussions, and so, you know, I suppose one outcome is that you could allow, you know, parents who are requesting to have a different assignment have one, and you could all assign them along with the K1, you know, students in Salisbury. In which case, the class sizes in Salisbury, you know, would need to be thought of potentially differently, which impacts whether or not others who are asking to go to Salisbury would have enough room. So that is a bit of a pressure that, you know, we should be solving, probably, if not at the next meeting, certainly the first meeting in April. That will feel late to people to have that question solved, even though it seems as though, you know, it's an okay timing. Also, contracts for professional staff go out. You know, those typically, under the best case scenario, go out April 1st. Their assignments are not on their contracts. However, you know, the contracts are due back 15 days after they go out, and an understanding of possible assignments, at least for our K-6 teachers, is typically the practice. Student, services staff take a little bit longer, but it would be unusual if people don't kind of have a sense of the possibilities of their assignment and what that might look like when they get a contract and are expected to act on a contract. So that's another just sort of timing pressure that relates to this time of year.
Yep. Ellen, and then Steve, and then Jamie.
I have one question for you, Wendy, but first, just sort of a thought that I'm holding as we, I think, are maybe moving towards making more of a decision in the next short period of time, is I feel a tension between what you're saying, Suzanne, which is true, right? These are very uncertain times to be trying to make policy around these issues, and there are so many factors outside of our control that we're all waiting to see where the chips land, and so it would be probably foolish to really start to reinvent the wheel before we have an understanding of what track we're on. But at the same time, I am very hesitant to make ad hoc policy decisions that might have broad application, particularly around an issue that we've discussed as a board and certainly as a policy committee pretty intensely, which is school choice. And I also, within that, really take seriously families in this community having some autonomy and some decision making that will feel important to them, that is important to them. So I just want to say all that because I think as we're heading into something, we have a lot to consider as a board around these really big issues and how broadly or narrowly or to what extent at all we decide to apply them. But my question that's sort of at the root of it, Wendy, and not to put you on the spot, but this would only really be coming to us if it could potentially trigger D6 violations, which would only happen if you were inclined to grant these waivers. So is that the direction that you're going in? That if we as a board were to say, you as a superintendent have the authority to grant this, you would take these requests and say, yep, I agree. This is not the environment for you anymore, and then that would trigger D6, which is why you need us to grant you that waiver or whatever it is. So I'm trying to understand if it's because you've sort of already moved to a direction of being inclined towards agreeing with these requests.
Well, I just to back up a little bit about the premise, of your question. So I'm not only bringing it here because it brings the minimums below 10. I think that's one of those things that is we've brought the minimums below 10, and if we were to grant any of these requests, I would want to treat them all the same. And so if we were to grant one that doesn't, let's say, bring something below a class size minimum, since we have 2 classes starting at 11, right? So we can stay above the class size minimum if we grant one. However, I would be inclined to treat them all the same. So if we do treat them all the same, that means we're pulling below the class size minimum. So that's why that point of reference is part of my discussion with you. In terms of my inclination, I think we went through a situation in September where prior to that situation, a number of parents expressed displeasure with the classroom situation that their child was going into, and for all good reasons, the classroom configurations that were implemented as the school year began, were not able to take that parental feedback into account. There wasn't any way to change a K-1-2 class at that time. There wasn't any way to arrange, the situation differently to be able to help parents to feel more assured about the situation that their child would be experiencing as learners. And that was a really difficult fall. It was a difficult fall for the kids, it was a difficult fall for the teachers, it was a difficult fall for administration, and I would like to take every step to really look at this very carefully together, because I don't want to be in a circumstance where we haven't done that, where we have not addressed parents' concerns clearly and intentionally prior to the start of another school year, so that we are in a situation perhaps at the beginning of another school year where parents, if this is the case, who don't feel that their child is in a learning environment that they're willing to support, have no other choice but to be there. Because I don't think our experience this fall, I heard very clearly from you that you would like not to repeat that.
Right.
And obviously, right, that's we want to have schools start strong. And so we have an opportunity to think through that together now, and I think that's why I'm bringing it to you. So you know, it's small, right? 22 kids in a school is small, you know, I think it might be interesting to know what the town of Ripton is thinking about that, you know, as well as between now and the next 2 weeks, and, you know, just kind of beginning to invite some conversation about that. It's different. And to your point, Steve, we have 5 fifth graders potentially, if everybody stays, right? We have 5 fifth graders that will be graduating in the next year, and we will not necessarily be able to enroll 5 kindergartners. So you know, the D6 situation will come up again, you know, so this is not an isolated circumstance, and I think that's understood, you know, by the community on some level. And the question is just, you know, how do we best make our way through this particular moment? So could the students learn there, you know, in 2 classes of 11? Sure, if that's what everybody wanted to have happen and everybody was committed to have happening, and that all felt good. My concern is if we have a number of parents who are concerned about that, that may shift that dynamic in a different direction, and so I'd rather deal with that now.
Okay, I think Steve, you had yours, and then
Yeah.
Jamie.
So anytime we talk about any of this, there's a lot of moving parts here. It feels to me like any discussion that we involve ourselves in tonight will take the rest of the meeting and 2 hours into beyond it. And I would feel much more comfortable if we could get some information that you would be willing to share with us in some sort of email where we can take it and consider it, and then put this on the table for action on the 24th. Rather than continue to try to hash it out tonight. It just seems like it's too fast if we do this all tonight. To make a decision tonight is what I mean.
No decision tonight.
It hasn't been indicated as an action anyway.
Okay.
No.
So,
And I really do think we need legal counsel to weigh in on this before we make any decisions. So at a minimum, I can work with Dr. Baker to set up an appointment with our lawyer and talk about this.
I guess what I'm suggesting is that we table this until the 24th.
Okay, in order to table a discussion, it's not a motion, so it's not a motion, so.
You want to table the superintendent's report? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, you know, whatever, I'm just suggesting to you, this is where we are, you know, and I've come to a place where I feel like I don't quite, you know, I don't have the authority to be able to respond to what I'm being asked to consider. And so that was my reason for bringing it before you tonight.
Let's go ahead with one more question, and I think, you know, at this point, really addressing folks' questions. We're not going to take action, so that we can then come back with more information. Mm-hmm. Jamie?
Sure. I understand the question of the timeline about needing to make decisions quickly and expeditiously for all people involved. These involve folks in Ripton. And I also think that, you know, there's, like, it feels like to me there's momentum toward a spiral where the school becomes unviable. Let me just say that. Like, it feels like we're heading toward a situation where there's a crisis. Or there is a crisis, I don't know. And that is a really big deal. And it feels weird to imagine making a decision that would really impact that severely in the next 2 weeks without more information. The other thing I would say is I'm just curious what people in Ripton would think. I agree we should consult legal, definitely. I know you met with folks there, and like I can imagine there being a world in which people are like, okay, 2 classes of 11. That's not what everybody wanted, but we can work with that. And I can imagine a world in which people would say 2 classes of 8 sounds a lot less exciting to us, or a lot less significant. And so without, communities do not make decisions like this, it's our job, but I would just be interested to hear what they think about that and where we are with that. Like, we really need to bring those folks with us as we make these decisions. And I don't know, I am not that person, but I feel like that community has been really, as we all know, significantly involved in this issue. And how do we figure out a path forward, sort of with them, to the greatest extent possible? I'm sure you think of this all the time because you're up there a lot. But I'm just wanted to state that out loud, that I feel like in addition to consulting other people, having those folks in the room, and Steve, I don't want to, you're literally in the room, so I know you know what's going on there more than a lot of us, but I would just like to get some sense of how people feel and think.
And clearly the legal is to really understand, once you have this policy, can we do something that's an exception and that kind of thing, getting advice around that, so we know procedurally more what we can do, or if we so choose to do, right?
Sure.
And so it sounds like what we want to do is direct Dr. Baker to work with Ripton, other families, to get a sense for, that community of parents, how they're feeling about this as well. Is that what I'm hearing from folks? Yes, Mary Heather.
I have a confused look on my face because I'm pretty sure she's just reported on that.
Yeah,
about what other families in Ripton are feeling.
Right.
And that's the question and issue before us. I can understand and really agree with Jamie's concern about the broader community. And I think we also need to focus in on our mission and our responsibility, and that's to the students.
Totally agree.
And that, in my opinion, is to be elevated above all else, because that's our responsibility. So I think it would be most helpful to understand how folks in the community are feeling. But again, the most pressing thing is our responsibility to the kids and those families, and I think we've already heard what they're feeling, and that's why we're here at this crossroads.
Yep. And Ron.
If I could just, I wonder if we could hear a little bit from an educator's standpoint about what are the implications of class sizes of that size, because my experience as an educator, the number of students in a classroom is going to affect the way you teach, but it's not going to necessarily be detrimental if it's under a certain size.
So I think at this point, hearing from educators is always a good thing. The question is more, or the circumstance is more, the parents have decided this is not an environment that they prefer their child to attend. So, and also, remember these classes of 11 are multi-grade. So it's a 2, 3, and a 4, 5. And those grades are not always evenly distributed. So the question before us is not whether, I'm not necessarily saying at this point in time that a class is or isn't viable by its size. That question applied to the K1 classroom that was 3 We said, okay, that one cannot run as 3. It's not substantially, it's close to 10, which is what the policy committee did. This scenario is where we have a group of parents that are indicating that that is not what they feel is adequate for their child. And so they're asking to attend another school. So whether or not we think it's adequate for their child does not impact their decision at this point to request another placement, if that makes sense. Because we've already determined that 2 classrooms of 11 are adequate. So just want to make sure I'm laying the context correctly.
Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, I have a variety of thoughts and, just kind of coming into this new role, what seems to jump out at me is I just think between D6 and C30 there will be some amount of interaction, and so contemplating what that interaction should look like would be a good thing down the road, so that it's clear if D6, C30, how do those two interact. I don't think that's going to happen in 2 weeks. So I think that's a bigger question. And as far as hearing from people in Ripton, I certainly am not going to represent Ripton's perspective. I encourage, if people are interested, to have that conversation with people from that community. But in terms of policy solutions, I think more contemplation on how D6 and C30 interact specifically, because I think they will. This isn't, I assume, going to be the only time.
Yeah, and clearly, we do want to, we do need to pick up C30 again in lieu of that, totally. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that concludes the superintendent's report. If there aren't any more questions.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Next on the agenda are several items that are pertinent to reorganization. I went to the School Board Association website. They have a toolkit and a meeting checklist for decisions that we need to make at the beginning of our reorg, okay, for how we proceed as a board. And some of these we can go pretty quickly. First is establish regular board meeting date and time. At this time, historically, we've always met on the second Monday and the fourth Monday of the month at 6:30. And so I put that out there. Is that time good for everyone, or do we need to make a change to our meeting time?
Jamie's hand is up.
Jamie.
I am curious if 6 p.m. sounds possible to people.
Okay.
So not easily.
Okay.
Yeah, and it needs to be a time that we all can, really do it. I don't want to set it up so that it's hard for somebody. So let's first start. Is the second Monday and the fourth Monday work for everyone? Okay, and then it sounds like 6:30. We need to continue with that so everyone can participate. Okay. Okay, check that one off. The next item is annual board resolutions. In your board pack material, Matt provided a letter along with a couple resolutions that we need to make. The first one is to grant standard banking powers to fiscal officers throughout the district. There's examples of what that looks like, and we have to basically grant the powers to these officers. Can I have a motion first to grant the standard banking powers?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Discussion, questions? Go ahead, Steve.
under, let's see, under the list.
Yep.
I noticed that there are designated people at all the schools except Mary Hogan. Because it just has McJilton on there. Is that an oversight, or is that?
That's just the way that the accounts are set up at each school.
Okay.
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 Any other questions? Yes, Jason.
In the list, it says that we request distribution of ACSD financial reports to the ACSD Executive Committee of the Board. Should financial reports go to the Finance Committee?
Yeah, it should.
It sounds like that, right?
Where are you reading that, Jason?
In
This
the
is
resolution.
Memo to ACSD board members dated March 1st.
Well, there's
It's what's linked under resolutions,
Yeah, there's two resolutions here.
Yeah.
but there is one that says that.
Yeah,
it's to the executive.
we're focused right now on the first one, which is the fiscal officers.
Which is pretty,
Oh, Suzanne has a question.
Suzanne?
it's not a question, it's just really a standard list that we receive every year of all the different funds, where they are and or who has rights to
Yep.
sign off on use of those funds. So I move to accept the board resolution on,
Jason's question is related to the resolution, just to be clear. When you look in the agenda, it says action, annual board resolutions with a link. When you click on that link, a memo opens.
Right.
And in that memo, the second bullet point says request distribution of ACSD financial reports to the ACSD Executive Committee of the Board. So I think his question is pertinent,
That's the second one we'll be talking about.
even though it comes first in the agenda.
Yeah, I'm confused by this too.
It's fine if we're skipping, but that's
Yeah.
that's where I was too, because it's the first link in the agenda is resolutions. Then it goes into grant standard banking powers to fiscal officers throughout the district.
Yeah, so I'm going by A and B up at the top.
And so B is, there
This
are
is-
there are two
We're
board.
going by 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 1 and 2.
We have 1, 2, and 3.
In
So-
the memo?
A and B is within. C.
Within the memo.
That's
Okay,
the-
but the memo you're talking about is different than the memo we're talking about.
Are you talking about this memo that Matt wrote?
Yes.
Okay, so the first bullet on the bottom is the first board resolution document that has all the names. The second bullet refers to the second board resolution,
Right,
right?
right.
Authorize
Right.
the superintendent of schools to authorize
Just
payment.
make sure we're organized.
So what we're looking at right now is this document that has the long list.
So the resolution that
Which is an I.
corresponds to that second bullet does say Finance Committee, not Executive Committee. So
Yes.
that's what it is.
Yes, that's why I was trying to make sure I understood where you were reading
Right.
from. Yep.
Okay,
Good eat.
and so Suzanne, you made a motion?
well, I tried to make a motion.
Do you want to repeat that?
I'm sorry, just point of order, because I already have a motion that was made by Jamie and seconded by Jess for approving the,
Okay, thank you.
so I've got just kind of a hanging.
Okay, okay.
But there's, I think we need clarity about what that exactly was.
Right, right. Which is the discussion we're currently having.
Right.
So it's this form that's two pages. It lists all of the different ACSD, Bridport, Cornwall, so on and so forth. It identifies petty cash, activities funds, different funds within them, giving authorization to those folks to be able to do the financial activity around those accounts.
Okay, so this is my confusion. It seems like the resolution that we should be focusing on, which I believe Suzanne was probably trying to get started on, is the memo that Matt wrote, which then refers to the long list that you're holding
So there are two board resolutions, and you need to adopt both of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Matt's memo tells us that we need to act on these two resolutions,
Yes.
A and B.
Gotcha.
Right.
Right? And so we're looking at A now, which is,
The long list.
yeah, the
Standard
long
Okay.
list,
powers.
which is, in your agenda is I. Item I, right?
Right.
So I have a motion. Any other discussion? Are you okay if I call the question? All those in favor of granting the standard banking powers to fiscal officers as shown in the attached document, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so now we can move to the next item, which is authorization powers to members of the board, right?
Yeah.
And in this particular case, it's B in the memo, item B, and it's linked in Roman numeral II, right, two.
Yep.
Okay?
H2II.
And so, can I have a motion for the authorizations of powers to members of the board?
Barb,
Yeah, go ahead.
second, authorization requires a choice,
Okay, thank you.
by the board regarding, whether or not any two members or two specific members or
Thank you.
any two members can be signers.
Or the entire board.
Which is any two board
Any
members.
two members, so, yeah. It could be, two members of the finance committee or any two, it's, so there's a choice that needs to be made there. And then you'd also have to choose how financial reports are distributed.
Right. Yeah, thank you, thank you. So, for example, in the past, Chip and Jason reviewed the financial reports, right? And they were the ones that were signing off on the bills after they reviewed the ledger every 2 weeks. And so the choice here is to authorize two board members to do that. We haven't officially created a finance committee yet. Right, so go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering if it was Jason and Chip by name or by title? Was it them as the chair and the vice chair?
I thought it was any two.
Okay.
Yeah, it was any two.
But should it just be the chair and the vice chair of the finance committee?
No.
It should be
We
any
don't
two.
have a vice chair of the finance
Yeah.
committee.
Okay. We will.
Yes.
but-
Hand up
Suzanne?
and perhaps
If you
can shed some.
put just two names on there and somebody's out of town, you don't have a second person able to sign the bills.
Yeah.
So historically in this district, we've always said the entire board can go sign the, read the bills and sign them, because you just never know when somebody's not available.
Yep.
And then we have the treasurer on an emergency basis.
Okay. So, it sounds like then any two board members, is that what we had last time?
Yes.
I believe so.
We've traditionally had?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And also so let's focus on that one first. All those, any more questions about that before I ask the question?
We have not accepted a motion yet.
Okay, so can I have a motion to either identify whether or not we have two specific board members or any two board members?
Can we do the whole thing as one, please, Barb?
Sure.
So may I make a motion that under board resolution, that the board of directors adopt the following resolution, that any two board members of this 13-member board may sign, and also that every member of the school board of directors receives a copy of the district financial reports.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Ready for the question?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor of any two board members being able to sign off on the bills and that every member of the school board receive the distribution of the financial reports. Indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. The next item came from the Vermont School Board Association checklist, and that is, if we want to appoint a board member to be a voting delegate for statewide health insurance which has to be done by April 1st. So you know we're part of, the statewide insurance, and there are times when votes happen, and it happens at the Vermont School Board Association meeting.
In October.
In October, right. The statewide health insurance folks come there, have a meeting, and there's things that are put before the body that we can vote on as a district, and we have one vote as a district. Last year, we didn't have anyone there present to be able to vote. We hadn't done this step, so we had no input in it. Okay, Steve?
I think, because we don't have a resolution in front of us, I think there are three options. First is to not designate anyone. Second is to designate someone, and third is to proxy our vote, to sign our vote over as a proxy to someone, and that's usually someone at the SBA. So I think there are three options here.
Yep.
Yeah, so what they indicated, new this year, under the process approved at the 2018 VSBA annual meeting, each SUSD has the ability to cast one vote to ratify the agreement reached by the statewide healthcare bargaining commission. Please be sure to add appointment of the CUSD voting delegate for statewide health insurance to the first meeting of your board meeting, as the ratification process requires the name to be provided to the VSBA and telephone number and email address by April 1st.
Suzanne is right.
Suzanne.
So if this is in reference to the statewide teachers' insurance, they are not doing anything currently. They are not in negotiations or anything. They have put that on hold. So as far as I have heard, that is, they put that off for at least a year. So I don't think we would actually need to do this.
Okay, I mean, that's an option, or we have somebody on standby so that we can participate if something comes up. If in fact something does come up and it's after April 1st, then we won't be able to participate, which is fine if that's what we want to do.
It doesn't hurt, since we don't know what's going on, it doesn't hurt to have someone designated, and unless anybody else would like to do it. I mean, because what we're doing is, if we know it's gonna happen, we meet as a board and we say, this is how we wanna vote as a board, and then you cast the vote as a board. It is not you making a decision.
Exactly.
You are just speaking as a person on behalf of the board.
Absolutely.
If no one wants to do that, I would be perfectly willing
Right.
to be the on-call person, but if somebody else wants to do it, that's fine too.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so my view is we do it, right? And if it's not needed, then we've lost nothing. If it is needed and we don't do it, we've lost input. So can I have a motion? Yes, Suzanne, I'm sorry, Mary Heather.
No problem. I make a motion that we appoint our board chair, Barb Wilson, to be the voting delegate for statewide health insurance.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'm ready for the question. All those in favor of indicating that the chair fills this role, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
This
Okay.
feels like something I should abstain from.
No, you don't have to say, you don't.
No.
No, not at all,
Okay.
not at all. Thank you, though. Okay, so that one's done. Next, going back to my list here. The next is to schedule a board goal setting work session. As you remember, as we were doing our superintendent evaluation, there's goals. And as a board, we also need to be looking at our goals and setting those goals for the year. And I would like to, if possible, tonight, schedule a session for us to do the goal setting. Typically, that would ideally be like a Saturday. It's hard to do that during the week at night. And I can throw out, say, the first Saturday in April.
April 5th.
Yep. And yes, Jamie.
Hi. The Saturday thing, I'm just curious what people think about possibly doing it in the evening. I mean, it's going to be a late one, I guess, but we often have late ones. I don't know. I'm just putting out there that weekends are much harder for me to be there.
Okay, that's good.
What's the duration?
I would, we haven't like planned it out or whatever, but I would guess it's gonna be, what, 3 hours, 4 hours?
I think you did sort of did you do an 8 to 11 or something like that last time?
It was longer than that.
It was longer. It was, we had lunch.
Yeah.
But I
Go ahead, Suzanne.
I think if we come, we know what we need to do, and we buckle down and do it, we can get it done in 3 hours or less.
With intention.
With intention.
But I hate memorizing.
So what's the preference? A Saturday, or try to find a time during the week that we can do this? Jason?
I suggest we add a Monday meeting since we've already got Mondays sort of blocked anyway.
I would never be able to make it. My husband's on the fire department, so we alternate Mondays. But that's just my scheduling conflict.
Ellie?
I work every other Saturday, so I could only make it on the Saturday that was the other.
And so what's the other?
You said for April?
Yeah.
I would be working on the 12th and the 26th. I would not be working on the 5th and 19th or the,
The 19th is Saturday before Easter.
Yeah, and the
If it's
26th
going to
is
be an
also
April
part of the
Saturday, it
break.
sounds like the
I'm
5th
sorry?
is if it's going to be an April Saturday, it sounds like the 5th is the better option.
Jamie, could you make it work?
Well, as it happens, April 5th, I won't be here. But that's not the reason I was saying that. But I won't be here April 5th.
So what do folks want to do? Suzanne?
If I'm understanding it, this also can be a virtual meeting for those that can't make it for one reason or another but want to join. It's not, we're not going into executive session,
No.
so that it can be done virtually as well.
Yes.
It's possible.
Not trying to make you change your plans to
No.
come, but I just wanted to make sure people knew that was an option.
Right.
Steve?
And I think for clarity, when we call something a retreat, like we've done retreats in the summer, like June, this is not that.
It's a work session.
It's a work session to do
Yeah.
goal setting. It's
Yeah.
not the board training and all the other
Yeah,
stuff that we do in the
exactly.
summer. So just clarifying that for people who have
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
on this, that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
It's
thank
something
you.
different.
Yeah.
And that other one, that's not that's not even on the agenda yet.
No,
So
no.
that's a different thing.
Right.
So.
Thank you. Mary Heather?
I just want to make a suggestion just so that we can keep this moving along. Perhaps what we can do is not finalize the date right now, but have, do like a doodle poll or something
Okay.
with, a Saturday date and maybe a couple of evening dates, and just see how it shakes out and just obviously target it for April so that we get it done sooner than later.
Right.
Does that sound reasonable?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Mary Heather.
Yep.
Again, from the reorg checklist is to designate places to post meeting agendas and minutes. Obviously, we use our website, And then I'll let Dr. Baker, typically what we do now, I'll let you kind of report out what we do.
Schools and town clerk's office, we don't post minutes, we post agendas.
Right.
You know, but we don't post the minutes. The only place that we post the minutes is on the website.
Right.
Yep.
Is that fine with everyone, or? Okay, Suzanne?
Just a question, if someone was to, call in and say, I don't have internet, and I would like to have the minutes, do we still give citizens in this district the option that if they request to have the minutes and the agendas mailed to them, they can have that?
Well, I don't know what we've done in the past, but we certainly would be mailing people minutes if they asked for them, yes. Yes, absolutely.
Right, they would have to reach out, though.
Yeah, we haven't had any of those requests, that to my knowledge, but we would certainly attend to them right away if we did.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so moving to the next item, if everyone's okay. So the other thing on the reorg checklist is for boards to agree on how they want to use Robert's Rules of Order for each new board, right? In the past, we decided to use the full Robert's Rules, not for small boards. We're kind of like on the cusp. It's for like approximately 12 and under, we're 13, right? We did make one exception to that, where we didn't have to stand. If you read Robert's Rules, when you make a motion, that kind of thing, you're supposed to stand, right? And when you're addressing the chair, you're supposed to stand. So, you know, we decided that we didn't have to do that, so we modified it as a board and agreed to it. In your board pack is some notes that I had typed up back in 2023 that talks about the use of, the basic. It summarizes the Robert's Rules of Order for boards, and then I identify where small board version, how it would change it. Where it would be kind of the circles that are indented without being darkened, right? In the minutes that I gave you, it all says small board version difference, right? It's more the formality of how we run our board meetings. And so we need to make a decision, and if folks want to think about this, we could put this on the agenda for next time, if you want to make the decision instead of doing it tonight, because we have quite a bit of stuff here to do, or we can make a decision. So if someone wants to make a motion, then we can consider it, or we can decide, let's make that decision next meeting.
I move that we use the full Robert's Rules of Order minus the obligation to stand.
Thank you.
No second.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion?
You can still stand if you want, right?
Yeah.
It's not obligated. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Stretch your legs.
Okay,
Yeah, we're not popping up like whack-a-ball, right? Any discussion? And so basically, we continue on like we have been.
Yeah.
Are we ready for the question? And we had a first and we had a motion and a second,
Yep.
so we're good. All those in favor of continuing using the full Robert's Rules of Order, with the exception that we won't require folks to stand when addressing chair or making motions, that kind of thing, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Next is code of conduct. First, I included in our package A5, and I have copies of the Vermont School Board Association Code of Conduct that I can pass out for folks to sign. And this is different than oath of office. This is pertinent to our A5 policy. And in the policy, there's specific things that we have codified in policy that I can kind of read some of them. I'm not going to read all of them. Board members shall have loyalty to the stakeholders and to the communities who comprise ACSD. Board members shall be impartial and keep the needs of the entire district paramount. Board members shall not be conflicted by loyalties to staff, other organizations, or other personal interest as a parent, guardian, or friend or of a student. Board members shall not attempt to exercise individual authority or influence over any aspect of the school district. Board members' interaction with the superintendent or staff shall recognize the lack of authority vested in individual members unless explicitly authorized by the board. And what this includes is for us going to, you know, Matt or other folks under working for Dr. Baker and asking them to do something for us. Any requests that we have really needs to go through Dr. Baker. And so this is agreeing that, you know, we're not going to try to direct someone like Matt to do certain work without it going through Dr. Baker. Okay. And
You heard it here, Matt.
yes. A board member's interaction with press, public, or other entities shall recognize the inability of any individual board member to speak for the board except as explicitly stated in board decisions. Board members assigned by the chair to act as a liaison between an organization and the board, such as our Hannaford Career Center, MCTV, CPAC, for example, shall make clear their role as facilitator of information and not to speak for the board. Okay? And I think the rest is pretty straightforward. So in signing, you know, this form, that's what we're all agreeing to. And so if in fact folks couldn't assign those before they leave today, that would be awesome. The other thing I included in here is policy A6, and in this particular case, it talks about conflict of interest, and as Laura showed us by example, you know, she is abstains from voting on anything related to hiring of personnel, right? So I just included that in here as well for folks to make sure that they take a look at, and so that at times if we're voting, if you feel like you fall in any of these categories, it's fine to abstain and proper. Any questions on that before I move forward? Next, we have in your board pack, committee, what did I call this?
Committee charges
Yes.
and assignment
Yes,
process.
thank you. Committee charges and assignments. I also included, just for reference, because I like to look and see what other boards do, was something that Addison Northwest has on their website for their committee charges as well. So if you look at the packet, it talks about at reorganization, we are to distribute the standing committee charges, that's per the checklist, discuss and or make changes to the charges, create new and ad hoc committees as required, and appoint board members to each committee, which we won't do at this meeting, but you will be sending me your interest of what you would like to participate in, and then the executive committee will work together to make assignments. Yes?
How many committees, just for everyone to, should we be requesting to be on?
Okay,
A minimum
I
and a
would,
maximum.
I would say give us your top 3 in order, because it's a big board and there's so many committees, and I think it's important to have a combination of new folks as well as folks that are seasoned on each committee. So we have to really, it gets complicated, right?
But the goal is that everyone serves on 2?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Mary Heather?
Can I make a suggestion that you give us a deadline for giving our preferences to?
Yes, I suggest that, would folks be able to do that by, say, Wednesday, close of business?
Sure.
And if you look at the various different descriptions, I pulled these, other than the executive committee, which isn't on our website. I pulled all the other ones from the website. And I'm wondering, in lieu of time, are we, do we want to talk about any changes to these, the wording, what have you, or that would be another meeting potentially? What are folks thinking? Steve?
So for people that are new to the board, there's a couple of things that you probably want to know. I can't speak for the other appointments as representative, but we have traditionally said that the Hannaford appointment counts as a committee assignment, so because it is a lot of work,
Right.
And as much as a committee at least.
Yes.
Now I have not done that. I have served on 2 committees here and
Right,
Hannaford.
right.
So, but it's not necessary, and I'm
Right.
saying that for Laura's benefit and for people that are new
Yeah.
to the process. The second thing is, although negotiations is listed, this is not designated
Right.
as a year for negotiation, so we don't necessarily.
Right.
And I think everybody that was on the negotiation team last time is still on the board. So,
We don't-
if you're putting down negotiations,
Yeah, and that was, I was gonna point that out.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, and so, definitely, thank you, Steve, Hannaford Career Center, CPAC, those are committees, right? You're meeting, and so you can take that in consideration as you're providing input. And, as Steve indicated, we have a contract now for both entities, and so there's not a need for a negotiations committee this year. It's one of our committees, but I was planning not to assign people to that committee this year, because anything that would come up would most likely go to the administration and they'd bring it to the full board, like a side letter or something like that. It doesn't require a negotiations committee. And so I get the sense folks feel that the committee descriptions are okay. Okay, and so the next page talks about facilities, which isn't a standing committee yet. It's, a committee, it's like a standing committee now. I don't call it a standing committee because it's not in our policy. That's why it's separate. The other thing, purpose of reorg is to identify potential for additional committees. Last year, we talked a couple times about student outcomes and, whatever we want to call that committee. And if, as a board, we could decide to form a committee and talk about what that charge would be for such committee, right? And so I wanted that on here in case folks are interested in having that, because our policy, we have, our strategic plan has targets and is very focused on outcomes. It seems very reasonable to have a committee that would be the go-to, so Dr. Baker, her team could bring reports like we do with the finance committee, and then have that information come to the board. So what are folks thinking? Do we want to form a committee? Yes, Mayor, Ellen.
Yes, I think it's really overdue. And given so many conversations we're having around, this came up in the policy committee a ton.
Yep.
In the context of D6 and C30, but trying to center student outcomes in that decision making, which we should, without a student outcomes committee seems sort of silly. So yeah, I think something that really, a group of people who really are focused on working with our administration and reporting to the board on how we're actually meeting our strategic plan goals related to how students are doing seems very wise.
Excellent. Yes.
Jamie had
Jamie,
seen it briefly,
just
so.
Thank you.
second that emotion. Years ago,
Was that a motion?
No, I was just.
Emotion,
Emotion.
like the song.
Oh.
Sorry.
I was like, did I miss something
No,
again?
it's okay.
Thank you.
Years ago, I suggested a curriculum committee, which is the wrong word to use, and everyone was like, "We're not doing curriculum." And I was blah blah blah. But this is what I meant, and I think it's a great idea. I would love to see. Well, it's hard. Like, does anyone know a board that has this committee? Do you? That can describe briefly what
CPU does.
what this
Yeah.
committee does.
Yeah. CPU, I'm pretty sure does.
Yeah.
And so, what kinds? Like, I know what I care about, but I'm interested in what kinds of things.
Dr.
This-
Baker, could you kind of give your thoughts around how a committee could be used?
I could, and I would certainly invite our Courtney Cron,
I was
Director
gonna
of
say,
Teacher
it's
and
the
Learning,
Courtney
to
Cron committee, right?
to
Yes.
do so too.
Which is
I know,
nice.
yes, it would give her very own committee, yes. I
Yes.
mean, you know, some of the things that we're working with next year, this coming year as a whole, are, for example, our assessment system, right? So what are the ways in which our local assessments are lining up with our state level assessments? And there's a fair amount of investment of the district's resources, both in time and in money, in making some of those choices, and then in lining up those efforts behind that. And it can be fairly technical work. And so having a committee that really understands more about what the administration is learning and moving toward in this regard, and having the board provide that committee provide some input into how can this information be shared easily with the public, in public forum. What does that look like? We haven't even gotten to how are we measuring student outcomes. Your strategic plan right now, our strategic plan, yours, those who wrote it, and ours, those who embrace it, we're focused on VTCAP because that's largely what's in your plan, right? So I think there are other things that should be there, and this is a group that could hear from the administration around other targets, other points of conversation, that are important in that. Have you thought of other things, Courtney, that might be helpful?
I would just add, I really agree there's a difference between a committee that's maybe like auditing curriculum or auditing program choices versus a committee that's setting goals for student outcomes. And Barb earlier at our new board member meet and greet made a point that research shows if you set outcomes or if you set goals around student outcomes, it's more likely you'll see those. And I think there's research for students that says the same thing. If students set goals, they're more likely to reach them just because they've set them. So I'm thinking that probably is true and applies up. And it's funny to have this job and sit in meetings and rarely actually talk about student outcomes. So that's all to say I agree.
Okay, so can I have a motion to form this committee? It has to be.
I move that we form a new ad hoc committee focused on student outcomes, to be named the Student Outcomes Committee.
Okay. Can I have a second on that? Steve Cash, thank you. Any additional discussion?
Perhaps the charge could be developed at the work session.
That's exactly what I was thinking. That's it. Or, if we form the committee, they get together and they could come back with a charge as well. So either one would work. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, ready for the question. All those in favor of approving that we form a new ad hoc committee called the Student Outcomes Committee, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed by saying nay? Any abstentions? We have a new committee, yes.
Barb, I'm sorry, can I ask one question
Yes.
just procedurally? This is an ad hoc committee because it is not established in board policy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
just-
to make it a standing committee, it would need to go through
Yeah,
policy?
yeah.
Okay.
And they call it ad hoc, that doesn't mean it only happens for a short duration. Like the facilities committee, it's
Yeah.
still there, and it's not in board policy, and we've continued to use that committee, right? And taken advantage of that committee. On the next pages, it talks about some of the questions that came up already. Board members submit their top 3 choices. The chair works with the executive committee to finalize assignments. The superintendent or designee will schedule the first committee meeting, because we don't have chairs yet. The first order of business will be to elect a chair of that committee. And the committee chair is responsible for notifying Darcy of committee meeting schedule and for setting agendas, working with the district leader assigned to the committee. And agenda and materials should be provided to Darcy at least 3 business days before the scheduled meeting. And there's more on scheduling meetings on the next page. It talks about, actually a repeat, I was gonna delete the other line. Committee chair, we already talked about that. Agendas or materials must be provided on the Thursday, the week before the scheduled meeting. So this is a mistake on my slides. Cross out on the previous page, 3 business days prior. She would like to have them the Thursday of the week before, so that she can warn everything and have that done. And I had meant to cross that out, because she worked with me on this page. Agenda materials, use the committee agenda template in Google Doc. Minutes would be inserted in a copy of that warned agenda, so that's similar to the format that we're used to. And email agenda and materials, we've already talked about that, so that she can insert them in the public Google Drive, like where you've accessed the meeting materials for tonight's meeting. And it just then talks about state statute that they need to be posted, draft minutes within 5 calendar days of the meeting. Okay, we good? Mm-hmm. Okay, we're almost, sorry, a bunch of stuff here. The next item is review and approve board norms, and VATIC 2 is in board pack. These were the board norms that we adopted on May 9th, 2023 and July 18th, 2023. In lieu of time, I'm wondering if folks want to, we can either adopt as is, or if we think we want some discussion on this, we could have this as part of maybe the goal-setting session. I'm fine with that. What's your thoughts? Waiting, or make a motion, or we'll defer. Mary Heather?
I'm just gonna make a motion that we adopt the existing ACSD meeting norms.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Which could include some changes if you wanted to do modification. Okay, ready for the question? All those in favor of adopting our ACSD meeting norms as included in your pack that were last updated on July 18th, 2023, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by nay? Abstentions? Okay, so we have meeting norms. And I do really encourage folks to look at these and help each other adhere to our norms. The other thing, just for information, I happened to find this on the Vermont School Board Association under one of the toolkits up there, and I thought it was kind of cool because it's kind of reminders from the Governor's Core book. And even though it says the first 100 days and it's kind of directed to new trustees, I think it's a really good reminder for each and every one of us that we suspend all preconceived notions about the district, the staff, the board. we get up to speed in a reasonable amount of time, be mindful of confidentiality, the special nature of trustship, and relationships with organization, avoid conflicts of interest, accept the realities of governance, and understand that time is your best friend. And, this was on the website, and so I thought I would steal it and put it in our packet, as well as the onboarding materials, because it's, I thought a great reminder for us all. Okay, next, communication practices. So, as a board, what we need to think about is make decisions around who would respond to board emails. When we get emails from the board, our policy has been to have our clerk respond. If we want to do something different, this is the time. And so let's just take one at a time here and go quickly. Is there, folks feel okay about doing that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Respond to the press.
Does Mary Heather feel okay about doing
Yeah.
that?
That's true.
We just do a boilerplate, like,
Yeah.
thank you for.
Responding to the press, right? There's, right, oftentimes, like tonight, we have press come in. And we, as a board, really should have a protocol for how we respond to the press. And oftentimes, I think it's really having administration, the superintendent respond, but there are times when there may be some reason they would come directly to us, and we can always abstain, basically say no comment. But it's something to talk through, because we have new board members, that kind of thing, right? So, any thoughts around this, based on best practices that we've been doing over time? Suzanne?
It is not the board's responsibility to individually speak to the media, because we are not given permission by the board to speak for the board. You can say you're speaking as a private, individual, but they will say, well, you're on the board. So typically in this district, any response to media has been approved by the board and goes through the board chair. But it's approved by the board, what's being said and what's being given out.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that?
Sure.
So I was contacted when the policy committee was sort of at our peak of engagement on D6. I was contacted, and I know other policy members I think were contacted by the Addy Indy. I didn't say much, but I was asked as a member of that committee what we were working on and where we were arriving at. If I am interpreting what you're saying to be true, Suzanne, I should have said I can't speak to you as a member of the board. Or I would never have said the board feels this way.
Right.
But as an individual member of the board, I feel like it's appropriate if I'm asked. I will make my own decisions about, like, no comment, I don't want to talk about that. But it's not as though our board norms or policies restrict individual members from responding to inquiries from the press, right?
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
It just has to be stated that that's your own opinion, not the opinion
Right.
of the board.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or your committee.
Right.
So,
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
that's the clear.
and if in fact, for example, and I said I was not responding for the board, I put the op-ed in the paper, right? But I was quoting what was already in Emily's 4-pager, right? And so I wasn't giving my thoughts. I was just repeating, this is decisions, facts that have been made, right, as the chair. But I purposely said, because I hadn't brought it before the board, that I was responding on behalf of myself. Any questions about that? Okay. Next, also, the other thing is response to parents. There's a protocol. If a parent comes to us and concerned about something that's happening with their child, we always have to remember there's a protocol, right? And their lines of communication are, you know, the teacher, the principal, you know, the superintendent. It's not us, right? We can't do anything based on that situation, right? And it's important, you know, for all of us to remember that. And especially since we serve a quasi-judicial role as well. So if in fact there was something that was happening there, we could be in a position where we might actually have to abstain from the discussions if we need too much information on one side and maybe wouldn't be able to be objective, right? So just something to be aware of. Yes?
The other thing I would add to that is if someone does reach out to you and has an issue and you tell them, you know, your first place is to take it to the teacher and then whatnot, my past practice and my current practice will always be to alert the superintendent that I just had this phone call with an irate parent. This is what I told them.
Yep.
Just as a FYI and cover my own butt.
Yep. Good advice. Discuss board development.
Sorry, Barb.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I just want to provide a resource, especially to new board members.
Yes.
On our website, under school board, and also under the district tab, there's a page called Who Do I Contact?
Yes.
And that is a really nice resource to direct people to if they have questions concerning their kid or a district issue or whatever. It's kind of a roadmap for how to direct people to the appropriate places.
Yes.
So just know that's on the website for you and others.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next, discuss board development opportunities and attendance. I just want to highlight that training and board development opportunities, there's a whole rich set of webinars that the VSBA has on their website, and they also have webinars that they're always advertising in their newsletter, and there's also the October VSB conference, VSBA conference as well, which is a really great resource for board development. And as we do more self-evaluation as a board, there will be times that we're going to identify a topic that we want to drill down on. So one of the things that we identified several months ago that after we had board reorg was to have a more in-depth training and discussion around executive sessions, for example, where we would invite in our legal counsel to help provide that for us and address our questions, right? And so if there are topics that folks are struggling with or feel would be a good board development exercise or an activity, please share those. And then as an executive committee, we can look at those. Okay, and last but not least, it tells me on the checklist, discuss local and statewide education advocacy responsibilities, right? And so one of the important things that we need to do is, on behalf of our district, is keep abreast of what's happening in Montpelier, and really provide input as we can. And we just recently did that. We submitted our summarized discussion as testimony to the Finance and Ed committees in both the Senate and the House, right? So it's very important that we keep up to speed on things that may in fact impact our kiddos in our district in the future. And I'm not going to say anything more of that, but it is specifically, and the other thing is the Vermont School Board Association, like today they had a news letter that came out, and it's a really great resource because it does take a lot of time to spend hours listening to these committee meetings. And so today they had a great summary of some really key things that are going on and observations and that kind of thing from their perspective. Okay, anything else? Any questions? If not, I'm going to turn it over to Jason. Sorry about that. Who's going to help us walk through an action on that the Facilities Committee is bringing to us for capital improvement planning RFP.
I apologize, these slides did not make it into the board materials in time, but they summarize all the materials that
And if you
have.
can give those, I'll make sure we get them in the.
I already sent them to Darcy.
Oh,
but
perfect, perfect.
We did not make the cut. Great, we're gonna talk about the capital improvement planning process that we kicked off on August 28th, 2024. Everybody remember that meeting? I'm sure you do. Where we discussed two processes, process A and process B, where we divide up capital planning improvement into two tracks. One where we target Middlebury schools in process A, and where we target rural elementary schools in process B. At that meeting, the full board authorized the Facilities Committee to begin work on process A. So that's what we did. For your reminder, this is what process A looks like, this is what process B looks like. This is directly from the slides from that meeting on August 28th. So that was August 28th, and the last fall, we pretty much spent a couple months refining the RFP with the help of Bruce and Matt, thank you guys very much, and sent it out in December. We had responses to that RFP in January 10th, they were due back, and these were for architectural firms and planning firms to help us with this work. In February, we reviewed the RFPs, conducted in-person interviews with the two firms that responded. And on our February 25th meeting, the Facilities Committee voted to recommend that we plan this work and continue this work with Truex Collins. We received two finalist responses, one from Freeman, French and Freeman, and one from Truex Collins. The two responses were materially similar. I mean, we had a very detailed RFP that they responded to, so there wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room and a lot of creativity. One approach difference was that Freeman, French and Freeman was going to partner with another firm that specialized in education architecture specifically, and so it's going to be like a dual firm response, and they've done other projects like that before, and so that was one of the sort of wrinkles, whereas Truex Collins has all the expertise in-house. They didn't require an outside architectural firm to help them with that. When we sent the RFP, with both process A and process B in the RFP, even though we knew we were not authorized to work on process B, because we wanted both firms, or all the firms that responded, to understand the full scope of work that we're talking about. And both of them looked at our RFP and proposed a parallel timeline to run them both together and accomplish them both at the same time, which was great, but not particularly what we were looking for. Freeman, French Freeman had a roughly 7-month timeline for process A, whereas Truex Collins had a 5 to 6-ish month process, so not materially different. They were materially different in the fee proposals, though, and that was one of the things that we addressed in the in-person interviews. So, anyway, this is a one-slide summary of the hundreds of pages of backup that's in your board package for tonight.
Yes.
So, fair if you have questions. So the Facilities Committee recommendation is that we partner with Truex Collins for process A. These are the main reasons that came out of our Facilities Committee discussions. You know, the extensive experience they have with ACSD over 15 years. They are currently working on many similar projects around the state, which is nice to see. And they were certainly the most competitive in terms of timeline in their fee proposal. So, questions about that? Yeah.
A small, but I actually kind of worried maybe significant difference. It's probably not, but between the two RFPs, just through a quick review. In process B, the FFF firm lays out under phase 1 options, review and update 2022 reconfig, and this is all related to reconfiguring elementary schools. Rural elementary schools options, or sorry, all of them, but I think focusing more on the rural towns. Review and update 2022 reconfiguration options and add new options as specified by the board. And Truex Collins has something much more abbreviated, which is revisit and update reconfiguration options in the 2022 report. I understand all the reasons for going with Truex Collins, so this isn't me arguing not to for this reason, but I appreciated in the FFF proposal that they included language, and I would hope that we could really hold Truex Collins to a similar intention of taking some guidance from the board. And I'm specifically thinking about the policy committee, because we've talked a lot about reconfiguring schools through C30 and a process by which the board and other stakeholders might start to engage with that question. So just wanting to make sure that these don't happen on, I mean, they will happen on parallel tracks, but so disconnected. And there, just that language in the other proposal was like, oh, and that's intended in the way that they're even responding to this. So just want to say on the record, again, not a reason to not go with Truex Collins, but making sure that there's really intentional, from their perspective, intentional input from the board, which would be our job as the conduits from other conversations to inform that as well.
Just to clarify, we're not doing parallel tracks. We're only gauging process A.
Yes,
so anything response to process B.
I meant parallel tracks of like whatever's happening on C30 from a policy perspective,
Yeah.
and then whatever's happening on the facility side.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah, and we also talked about in the committee that the board really needs to be the face. You know, in the past, I think they were really it was good cop, bad cop kind of thing. And so they're really taking the direction from the board. And we're not just like opening it up, tell us what to do kind of thing. And there would have to be a contract written here with specifics of what the deliverables are and how we're gonna work together, that kind of thing. It's really who we engage with to really do that next step.
And if we engage with one firm in process A,
we could do
don't
another
like
one
it,
in B.
Do not have to use them for process B.
Fair. Yeah.
It's our decision.
Yep.
Other questions?
Do you mind actually just going a slide back, just so I can take notes on that? Thank you.
Sure. Other questions, concerns?
And so tonight, we would like to take action on this and select one of these firms that we can then engage in and create the contract and get going with for process A. And so we need a motion. You could go ahead, Jason, and make the motion.
I move that we authorize the ACSD superintendent to commence work on the capital improvement planning process A for Mary Hogan, Mums, and MUHS with Truex Collins for an amount not to exceed $135,000.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion. Everybody feeling okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Are we ready to call the question? Let's see if I can read this. All of those in favor to authorize the ACSD superintendent to commence work on the capital improvement planning project. And then in parentheses, I'm trying to read it.
Process A.
Process A, Mary Hogan, and Mums and the high school with Truex Collins for an amount not to exceed $135,000. So much for my glasses. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, Steve. Okay. Next is our second public comment period, and if there's any in the room, and we have the public in the room just shook their head no. Is there anyone online that would like to make a public comment? If so, please raise your Zoom hand. Okay. Next, board reflections. If anyone has any reflections for today's board meeting they would like to make, feel free. Jason.
I would like to welcome our new board members and thank you for agreeing to 3 years of service.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, anything else? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, second. Jason, thank you.